What is up, nerds? The Immortal Nerd here, and this video will be my review of the Dragon Ball Super superhero movie. Without making this intro too long, I'm gonna go ahead and lay out how this video will be presented. The first thing I'm going to do is give give a synopsis on what this movie was about. So the main plot or the anchor that surrounds this movie. Following that, I will give a comparison and contrast between this movie and the Dragon Ball Super movie. Now, the reason why I'm doing this is because after watching this movie, I felt that it did have some similarities with the Dragon Ball Super movie, and obviously some differences, but not as in one was about Saiyans and the other was about organization, but more so how the things that were similar, it was presented in a different way, if that makes sense. If not, you'll understand once I get into it. So with that being said, in this section, I am simply just listing what was similar and what was different between these two movies. That's all I'm doing. The reason why I'm doing that is because if I give my opinions for each one separately, I will go off into a tangent and will lose a sense of time, and this video will be forever long. So I structured it this way so that will not happen. So that's where after this section, that's where my opinions will go. So I will talk about those things that were similar and different between these two movies and about the superhero movie in general. So at the end of all of that, I'll be giving a grade for this superhero movie. Don't know if it will be a letter grade or a number grade, 1 to 10 or from 1 to 100. I don't know yet. Hopefully by the end of this video, I'll know. If not, I'll just edit it in afterwards when I finish. So with that being said, let's get right into it. The overview of this movie, or synopsis of this movie, is very short, trust me. So essentially, the Red Ribbon Army wants to make a comeback at world domination. No surprise there. But they cannot do this with the Z Fighters still around. So they need a way to get rid of them. It's simple as that. So moving on into the comparison and contrast between this movie and Dragon Ball Super Broly movie. In a way, they are bringing back a old or previous character / organization as the premise of their story. In the first Super movie, it was Broly. In this movie, the Red Ribbon Army. Cool. They use this foundation to introduce new characters that may have some relation or connection with these old or previous characters that we know from the Dragon Ball franchise. I have to say that. Another thing that happens between these two movies that are similar, somebody is hurt or dies in order for a certain character to unleash their awakened power or full potential. Another thing, there's something that goes out of control to where we now have to fight a raging monster. So maybe people that was fighting before, they have to come together and fight now this new enemy, or you had one character now have to team up with other characters to fight this new enemy. Dragon Ball Super Broly, it was Goku and Vegeta having to come together either as individuals or as Gogeta fused to fight the raging monster that was Broly in that movie. And in this movie, I'll get into that later. The next thing that was similar between these two movies, the next two things, they were kind of trivial, don't necessarily have anything to do with the story of the movie, but they had about the same amount of battle time or fighting time in this movie, and their feature runtime was the same, an hour and 40 minutes long. So that was kind of interesting. With the fighting time in Dragon Ball Super Broly, it was about 32 minutes. In this movie, it was about 39 minutes. So that was very interesting, and I'll get into that in the next part, which is the contrast between these two movies. With the point of bringing in old or previous characters or organizations from this franchise, for Broly, it was done in a way to where we took a non-canonical character and rebooted or retconned him, into this continuity or a canon. While the Red Ribbon Army, they was already canon to the story. We just brought them back again. So first it was in Dragon Ball. Second, it was in Dragon Ball Z with androids and Cell Saga. And now here in this superhero movie. Another thing that was done differently between these two entities or IPs is that in Broly, the story was set up as a origin / backstory between the Saiyans and the Frieza army, while the other one does a montage of what happens in the beginning that leads up to why the Red Ribbon Army is doing what they are doing. So I thought that was very interesting that they went this route. That's all I'm going to say, because again, right when I was saying that, I felt myself going into my opinion state. So I'm just going to leave it at that. Wait till I finish. I'm almost done. So yeah, also inserting a few key elements that would introduce these new characters that I've talked about earlier. And the last thing that was done differently were how the fights were handled or presented. And Dragon Ball Super Broly, it was one big fight that was for the rest of the movie. In Superhero, you had multiple fights throughout the movie and one main battle or big battle that settled it at the end. It was a difference between the two there while watching it. So that's pretty much it. Like I said, they had a whole lot of similarities than what I thought it had. And that contrast, it wasn't really that much as far as with what was similar between the two and how they was done differently, again, if that makes sense. So I thought that was a very interesting between these two movies. Now, my opinions on the Dragon Ball Super superhero movie. So the first thing, bringing back the Red Ribbon Army to be the main focus for this movie. I do not have a problem with it. I do not at all. The only thing that I would have had a problem with is if they did a Disney move with Star Wars. Those of y'all know what I'm talking about. And I'm not going to say anything after that. So I think they could get away with this because I don't believe there was like a definite thing to say that, yeah, the Red Ribbon Army, they are done. Like they should not be coming back at all. So I don't think there was ever any reason for us to believe that as a viewer. I think they could get away with that. With that being said, how would have the Red Ribbon Army come back in the first place? And if they was still around, where were they? Very valid questions. Number one, that's where the new characters are introduced. We are introduced to Commander Red's son. He ended up having a son named Magenta, who ended up taking over the Red Ribbon Army, but put it under the guise of Red Pharmaceutical. So he put a big mask over it as a medicine drug company, all the while he was building up the Red Ribbon Army so he can take over the world again. But as I said, they couldn't do that while the Z Fighters were still around, so they had to wait for a certain opportunity. That opportunity was another new character, Dr. Hedo. Dr. Hedo, he is the grandson of Dr. Gero. So yeah, Dr. Gero ended up having a grandson that he didn't know about, obviously. But you may be thinking that, is this Android 16's son? No, it is not. Surprisingly, Dr. Gero and his wife, Vomi, that is her actual name, Android 21, modeled after his wife. That is her real name, Vomi. And Android 16 or his real son name is Jivo or Jevo, Gevo, and the wife's name Vomi. So his name is like a combination between his dad's and his mom's. So no, he had a second son. We don't know who his name is. Him and his wife died shortly after Hedo was born. Well, not shortly after, but he was at a young age when they passed. So we didn't have any, watch to say, the Red Ribbon Army didn't have any information on them as to what their names were in occupation. But they knew that that they had a child named Hedo, who is a doctor now at the age of 24, and was as more of a genius as Dr. Giro was back in the day. So they was like, yeah, let's seek him out so we can build the most, the ultimate android ever. So obviously when you think of that, you're thinking of, Cell. So you would think, Cell is going to come back into the picture. Yes and no, but I'll get into that later on. So these other new characters that I mentioned are a character that will be fighting up against these Z fighters, which is new androids. Not the one that I'm talking about, not the Cell one, but these other ones called Gamma 1 and Gamma 2. These are, I guess you could say, Dr. Hedo's prized possessions, because in the movie you can tell that he, is very, I can't think of the word, but he admires these work of creations that he made. And he also did some body modification to himself as well. He says this when they pick him up from the prison. He was in prison for doing something very illegal, so they had to wait until his time was up to go get him, and he was explaining to them, how this deal was gonna go. So yes, that was that. The fight scenes and Cell Max. So the fight scenes, for me, I should say this about myself. Personally, I like long, I'm not going to say drawn out, but I like long fights. I like long fight scenes. I've been that way ever since I was a kid. I grew up watching Once Upon a Time in China. I grew up watching Iron Monkey, Crouching Tiger, Legend of Fist. What's the other? The Tai Chi Master. What's the other movies? All those movies. I grew up watching all of those, and I loved them. So, and some of the newer ones. And I love, especially a good fight scene. If it's choreographed very well, then I can just sit hours on end watching a fight. Like, it does not matter. Like, whatever the story was about, I forgot it because I'm just watching this fight. And that's why I personally loved Dragon Ball Super Broly for how they did, or how they showcased the fight. I loved it. So now going into Superhero. I want to say I didn't like it, but I felt like I wanted more. I wanted more of it. Even though there were in total 4 fight scenes, they were small. They was in small increments. So your first fight scene was, I believe it was against Gamma 2. So this is when you are first introduced to the androids that Dr. Hedo created. Gamma 2 up against Piccolo. That fight was fairly short, with Piccolo taking the L, but he ended up escaping from the blast. Gamma 2 thought he killed Piccolo, so he decided to go back to the Red Ribbon Army base. Mistake on his part, because Piccolo ended up telling him to find that the Red Ribbon Army was, still in action, and that they had a whole base in Wakanda, making their schemes and stuff like that. And Piccolo was shook once he found out their plans on, eradicating Bulma and her evil organization. That was the only reason how the Red Ribbon Army got Dr. Hedo on their side, because in actuality he's not a very bad guy. he does have a superhero complex, and they figured it out right away and just came up with this ridiculous claim about how Bulma was evil and was working with aliens to take over the world first. So essentially, they was telling him that we need to stop them so we can take over the world before they do. That's essentially what this was, which was kind of funny, and he fell for it. I mean, I guess he's 24. He probably had no social life, superhero complex. It probably would have worked in real life. I'm just saying. But anyway, yes, they had that fight. Piccolo infiltrate their base, figured out that they do have a new and improved Cell called Cell Max in the works, which is supposed to be even more powerful than the Cell that they fought. So Piccolo was like, crap, we gotta do something. We need everybody on deck. Where's Goku? Where's Vegeta? We need everybody. That's when, after he left the base, he called up Bulma to ask, where they at though?
Where they at though?
And she tells him, oh, they off world. They off world training on Beer's planet. That's where we go into the fight scene number 2. It starts out with us about to see a fight between Broly and Goku, but that is quickly cut short because Broly was about to rage out, so Goku had to calm him down and be like, all right, chill. I'm just playing. We need to chill out right now. After that, you go and see Vegeta. He's doing some mental training. And Goku's like, why are you doing that? Let's fight for real. And that leads into Whis coming up with the idea of, first, he was saying that it was going to be a 3-way Saiyan battle against Goku, Vegeta, and Broly. And Goku, Vegeta was like, hold up. No. So they just revised it and said, all right, just Goku and Vegeta's going to fight. Broly, you watch. But the rules are, you two cannot power up. You can't power up and can't use any energy blasts. I think that's what the rules were. I know it was definitely couldn't, transform. But I think they also said couldn't use any energy blasts as well. Just straight hands. And that fight lasted for a good while. And then it cuts back to Piccolo trying to figure out what to do. With that, he ends up going to Dende to ask, if he could unlock his power like the Grand Dende. I was going to say the Grand Dende. Granddaddy Dende is the Grand Dende. It's the Grand Elder, like the Grand Elder did with Gohan and Krillin on Planet Namek. And unfortunately, Dende could not do that because he had to be of a certain age, so he wasn't old enough yet. So Dende ended up giving him the idea on why not ask Shenron to do it. He was more than capable of giving Shenron the ability to do that, even though he couldn't do it himself because he wasn't old enough. Really don't know about that. I would have to dig into the reasoning behind it, but I'll let it pass for now. So after that, Piccolo makes his wish, and the dragon, unlocks his power and a little more. Shenron words, not mine. And you can kind of see that Piccolo did change a little bit. You can see he got buffed up a little bit. You can see the muscles on the shoulders gotten bigger. So I'm like, okay, gave him something. So, let's see what he does. Maybe a round 2 with Gamma 2. And he does get that fight. That's where the third fight comes in. But it happens a little later because when not Goku or Gohan, when Piccolo infiltrates the Red Ribbon Army base again, he finds out that they're starting to commence their wiping out of the Z fighters, and they want to start with Gohan because they don't know where Goku and Vegeta are, even though they would be like the head of this evil organization of Bomas at Castle Corp. They can't find them. So the next person would have been Gohan, a shadow boss. I believe that's what they called him. So they was like, all right, we got to find a way to get him here so we can, kill him or whatever. And they come up with the plan of kidnapping Pan. And so they were like, all right, we're going to do that. Kidnap her. show him a video that we got her kidnapped and bring her on away. And that's what happens. He ends up showing up, went to go save his daughter, but get intercepted by Gamma 2, while Gamma 1 starts to fight with Gohan. Now, in the beginning, it seems as though these two was, evenly matched, but Gamma 1 was just testing out, Gohan's power, reading the diagnostics on him to say, all right, you really ain't about nothing, so let me turn it up a little bit. And not Goku. I don't know why I'm saying Goku. I'm gonna call Goku Kakarot now and just Gohan. Gohan starts losing, and Piccolo's like, yeah, we gotta do something about this. So he kind of tricks Gohan into thinking Pan gets hurt or whatever. So Gohan sees this and he goes Super Saiyan. So Gamma 1 sees this. He's a little bit shook that he could transform, but was like, okay, you may have transformed, but your power level is still within my parameters. I can still take you. So they start fighting again. And you see Gohan isn't losing as much, but he's still very much on the defensive. And if, the battle doesn't change, he'll end up losing, won't be able to save Pan, and, Red Ribbon Army will just proceed to whoever's else in this evil organization of Castle Corp. So with that, Piccolo sees this and was like, all right, we got to do something drastic. Pan, I gotta make it seem like I hurt you like really bad or whatever, start crying or whatever. And she does this and Gohan sees it and he just, he loses it and he transforms into his ultimate form or mystic form or whatever, name the form that you want to go with. He transforms into that. And once he does this transformation into his ultimate form, ultimate Gohan form, that's it. The battle changes. Literally. Gamma 1 could not do anything to Gohan. It was completely different fight. And this was let's say, if I remember, because there was a time skip in the movie. I think it was like 4 months or something. But there is also a very long time span between the last time we saw Gohan in the anime. In the anime, last time we saw him was the Tournament of Power. And I don't know how long that is from the current arc now, which is the superhero arc, or from this movie. So yeah, it was probably a long time, and he wasn't doing any training, because when we first see him, Piccolo goes to figure out why he's not picking up Pan from school, and that's because he's deep into his research for work about bugs. He studied bugs. I don't know what the title of that is, but yeah, he was studying ants, so he really didn't have much time for his family. And this was kind of seen, or you can kind of guess this by how Pan reacts when, Gohan isn't there to pick her up. And yeah, that's that whole thing there. So yeah, we can assume that he was not training after the Tournament of Power. So none at all. But once he hit Ultimate Gohan, he was beating the brakes off of Gamma 1. Like, that's just how crazy strong Gohan is. Like, it's pretty much saying he doesn't need to train. He can just go Ultimate and it's done. And it's kind of crazy because if we look at Piccolo, he is doing training like nonstop. He is doing training. Maybe not as intense as the Saiyans, because Saiyans are just bred differently. But he's still training, so he's not like slacking at anything. And he was having a hard time with Gamma 1 in the first bout. And even still, after he got his potential unlocked and a bit more, he was still having problems with Gamma 2 when they had their second round. Only until Gamma 2, really beat him up to where he had to transform into, into his newfound power, where he overpowered Gamma 2. He was clearly stronger. But I kind of find that crazy how Gamma 2 was still beating him up after he had got his potential unlocked, and he was still, he was still on the defensive. Versus with Gohan, yes, he was getting, beat up in his base form. He was still, getting handled in Super Saiyan form. But once he hit Ultimate, it was like, yeah, I didn't train, so what? I'm beating you up. And it was just funny because the whole time Gohan didn't know Piccolo was there, because he was in disguise. And once he figured out Piccolo was there, he started having a whole conversation with this man while fighting Gamma 1. Like, I was like, okay, there's no need for me to worry here, because just look at this man. He's not even worried about the guy who he's fighting. Like, even before he transformed into his ultimate form, I wasn't really worried, even though he was losing, because of how he was reacting to the hits from Gamma 1. He was just, like, he had time to, like, think, or he wasn't worried about, or he wasn't thinking that he was being, overpowered, or it wasn't overwhelming. It was just, he didn't train in a while. So that would make sense. From my experience when playing fighting games, if I haven't played in just months and I go back and fighting online with some players, I don't feel like I'm being overpowered. I'm just like, all right, they got me there, whatever. I mean, I ain't gonna be too salty about it. I haven't been playing or training, in X amount of time, so yeah, it makes sense. But once I unlock, I'm unlocked. I'm in. So yeah, that's kind of how it was being portrayed with Gohan. Even though he was getting beat up in his base form or Super Saiyan form, it wasn't like he felt like it was a complete loss. It was just like, yeah, I've been out of training. He's getting me where he shouldn't be getting me at. So yeah, that's on me. But it was never a point in time where I felt that Gohan was like, man, I can't do nothing about these guys. And I mean, to be real, even if you are weak, you wouldn't want to show that to your enemy, especially if they kidnap your daughter. Bro, you got to go in 100. So, yeah, I just, that fight between Gohan and Gamma 1, once he went Ultimate, it was like, yeah, this is this is no problem. This is no problem here. So after that fight ends when Gamma 2 and Gamma 1 realizes that the Red Ribbon Army was the bad guys all along, and they was going to dismantle the whole operation of the Red Ribbon Army. But that's when Magenta ended up activating Cell Max. Now, this was a bad thing because prior, Dr. Hedo told Magenta that if he activated him now, it was going to be chaos because he wasn't fully developed yet. Yes, you see early on when they was having this conversation that his body was essentially built already. They just didn't have the finishing touches or modifications on him to where once he's activated, is able to be controlled. So he won't, go rampant, which that was not done. Magenta activates him and Cell Max is on the loose. So now the Z Fighters and the Gamma 1 and Gamma 2 have to try and defeat Cell Max. Now, on first viewing of this movie or fight against Cell Max, I did not like it because it was just, a mindless. Cell Max was just a mindless beast. A mindless beast to tame or destroy. There was no intellectual combat as well as physical combat going on there. I do admire that a lot in fight scenes. And in this one, it didn't have that because he wasn't complete yet. And interesting enough, they used his second form as Cell Max. I thought that was very interesting. I did read up online saying that Akira Toriyama's favorite form of Cell was his second form, so that may have some influence on why that was the form that they went with. And I guess it would make sense if he's a raging monster. that form makes sense to be that way. His first form is like super scary, like it is very scary. His final form is just menacing. So the second form, I think that will fit a raging monster type. So yeah, but still, the whole raging monster, no type of intellectual thinking thing did get me until I watched a certain video on YouTube that talked about on the reason or theory on why he was that way, and I kind of like that idea, and I'll just keep it that way. So with that fight, yeah, everybody was getting beat up. There was Krillin there, Android 18 were there, Goten and Trunks was there. They hit a growth spurt, so they're taller now. They're not the same age. Who else? Who else was there? I think that was it. There was everybody that Bulma brought for backup. Goten, Trunks, Krillin, and Android 18. Yeah, those were the only people. And everybody else that was already there. Gohan, Piccolo, and Gamma 1 and Gamma 2. So everybody was ganging up on Cell Max, and they really couldn't do anything to him. We do get to see the fusion again from Goten and Trunks, but they didn't do it right. We end up getting Fat Trunks, but he pulled a W move though, surprisingly. So that was a thing. The only way that they could defeat Cell Max is a weak spot that Dr. Hedo implemented on him in case Magenta wanted to do something crazy like he did. They had to attack Cell Max in his cranium, or his head had to take damage in order for it to be effective. So to destroy him, they needed to obliterate his head essentially. So that was the main goal. But it was tough to do. We ended up losing we ended up losing a character, Gamma 2. He ended up sacrificing himself to try to deal the final blows to get rid of Cell Max, but it didn't work. So it had to be up to Gohan now to kill him with the finishing shot. And Piccolo was going to be, I guess, the sacrificial lamb part 2. And I kind of found this very interesting because while he was fighting, it was kind of like they pulled from two different things. From the fight that Piccolo and Goku had against Raditz, and the fight that Goku and Vegeta had against Kid Buu. How Vegeta was giving Goku time to get enough energy, to seal the deal, and how Goku was giving Piccolo time to defeat Raditz. More so with the first fight in Dragon Ball Z, Goku and Piccolo against Raditz, because what Gohan does is use a special beam cannon move on Cell Max. And I was thinking, is Piccolo going to die, while trying to get Cell Max, in the shot? Because he was kind of essentially doing the same thing that Goku was doing to Raditz. He was holding him down so he wouldn't go anywhere. And I'm thinking, is he going to die? And especially if he has to shoot him in his head, and if Piccolo's holding him, if his head is in that same spot, is Piccolo about to die too? But no, that didn't happen. That did not happen. They did not kill Piccolo off. He's safe and sound. They end up defeating Cell Max. All was well and good in the neighborhood, and that was essentially the end of the movie. They paid their respects to Gamma 2, how he was a true hero, on giving them a shot to at least defeat Cell Max, because he did damage him significantly. He tore off his arm, and he didn't heal it back. So that was kind of surprising. I thought he would have been able to heal it back if they used the same blueprint as Dr. Gero did. They gave them gave him cells of the different fighters and their abilities. If that was the case, I don't know why he didn't do it. It could have gone back to him just being a mindless beast. So he didn't have that intelligence to think of, hey, I have this ability to grow back or regenerate my arms, so let me do that. So that could have been a thing. But yeah, Dr. Hedo, he apologizes for what he did and was like, yeah, let me go back to prison. And everybody's like, well, first Krillin was like, nah, you don't need to do that, because that's too much paperwork for me. Honestly, that's what it was sounding like from Krillin. Like, don't turn yourself in, don't go back to prison, because that's just going to be more paperwork for me, and I don't want to do that. So Piccolo steps in and is like, let's just all forget that, this all happened. Well, we cool. So at that, we get a nice little ending scene of Pan finally learning how to fly. And that was her main goal for training in the beginning from Piccolo, because she wanted to learn how to fire energy blasts and all the cool stuff. But Piccolo would not allow that until she learned how to fly. And she couldn't do that until the end of the movie. So that was a nice little added touch to end the movie. So after the credits roll, we get a little credit scene. Back to Goku and Vegeta fighting. Looks like they are on their last breath. And they both are throwing a punch towards each other. And we see Vegeta's fist hits Goku first. And he has just enough to push him back. Goku falls to the ground and declares defeat. And Vegeta, standing there, raises his arms and rejoice and say that he finally beats Kakarot, and then falls to the ground. It was funny. It was very funny. I was not on the side of everybody else from what I've seen on the internet that said that the end credit scene was like their favorite, or it was like a dream come true, or whatever you would have called it, like something you've always wanted. And I was kind of wondering what that was going to be, because it was never told exactly what it was. So good on the people on the internet for not spoiling it, but bad on me for suspecting that it was going to be something grandiose, like a 2008 Marvel end credit scene type of deal. That's what I was thinking. But no, it was just like a fun little thing that Vegeta finally beats Kakarot, and I'm just like, oh wow, is that the only time Vegeta can win, is when they don't use their transformations? Like, wow, okay. But as I was thinking about it even more, I was like, that kind of makes sense, because Vegeta, he's a great fighter, and Goku, he fights great. Those of you who know where I got that from, put that in the comments below. But yeah, I said, okay, I guess that would kind of make sense. If it was just strictly hands, Vegeta would come out on top, because his battle prowess and technicality of a fight is far superior than Goku's, even though Goku, his innovativeness is very good, that can keep him in the battle for a long time. And with them transforming, I believe their powers, even if they are linear or exponential, Goku's is at a higher rates than Vegeta. That's what I believe. Yeah. So, with that being said, that would conclude this review of the Dragon Ball Super superhero movie. How did you guys enjoy the movie? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Did you even see it yet? Does this review make you want to see it? Does this review make you not want to see it at all? Yeah. So yeah, tell me how you guys thought about the movie. Was there anything else that you may have noticed that this movie reflected from any other movie or something in the show or the manga? Because I do know this movie came out first. It was later adapted into the manga. So this arc is after the Moro arc and after the Granola arc, and this story in particular, the superhero arc, comes after what leads up to this arc. So, from what I've seen online, the events that lead up to this superhero arc in particular, it's talking about more of Trunks and Goten becoming superheroes now. So this part of the story is like I guess it's supposed to be like a fun, more chillax, laid back type of story. Not like whatever the Moro or Granola arc was, or how the Tournament of Power, or how Broly was. And I guess that would kind of make sense. You would kind of have to plateau for a little while, and bring it, back down before you get back to the higher, epic, grandiose story or event. So, and I didn't really take that into account until I watched the movie again for the third time, and was coming up with the script for this video. Was that, yeah, it would kind of make sense for them to do that. And looking at it from that perspective, I can appreciate this movie a little bit more. Because again, when I watched it the first time, I was thinking, because the only thing that I've seen was, Broly, Tournament of Power, Broly movie, and just seeing stuff about the Moro and Granola arc. Didn't know, what was going to be happening next. So I'm just thinking, it's Dragon Ball, so they're just going to keep going up. So I'm thinking that it's going to be on the same page as those things. And when I saw it wasn't, I was equating that to that being, lackluster or things of that nature. When in reality, it needs to come down at some point. Otherwise, it's just going to be, it is going to be lackluster, because if you go up too much, what's going to top that big thing now? You can't have anything else that top it. So you need to come down at some point. And I believe the events that lead up to the superhero arc and the superhero arc itself is that cushion or buffer, if you will. So with that being said, I think what this movie was supposed to be for, good on you. Again, the plot or the story for it was very simple. It was a very simple plot line, nothing complex about it. So there was nothing really to be so grandiose about it. So again, they did a good job on it. It worked well for the story that they had, and fell in line even with the new information that was given, about Android 16 and Android 21, actually being son and wife of Dr. Gero. So, and Dr. Gero having a grandson, Dr. Hedo, and, Commander Red having a son, Magenta. That was fine. I was okay with that. So, with that being said, giving my grade on it, I still don't know how I'm going to rate it. If I do a letter grade, it would be, I don't know. I'll say a B. I'll give it a B. Even on the plus and minus system, I'll give it a B. Or no, you know what? I give it a B plus. I give it a B plus. The reason why I'm giving it a B plus is because it could have been an A if they didn't do what I did not want them to do in the movie. I'm not going to get into that right now. I feel like this is a good stopping point for this video. But yeah, they did not do that, and it's just from my personal feelings for this certain character. they did not need to do what they did, and I'm salty about that. So they get a B plus. So I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. And yeah, that's going to end this video. If you like this video, you know what to do. Like, share, subscribe. Get this video to all the nerds out there in the universe, multiverse, and alternate dimensions. And I will see you in the next one. The Immortal Nerd, signing off.